morning. Another day, another duel. Time to get in there and talk about more things regarding the Yu-Gi-Oh! YouTube content, gaming, dueling community. So I appreciate y'all tuning in for this. And I want to talk about a very important subject that we don't talk about often that I feel is extremely relevant to not only Yu-Gi-Oh players, but I want to say right now, and I want to talk about losing. When we talk about Yu-Gi-Oh all the time, we always talk about winning. We always talk about what's the best. We talk about this, we talk about that, but honestly, we're putting everything in a vacuum. We're only talking about the topological, quote unquote, best things decided by the world, okay, and not even the whole world, just the monitored world, you know. And when I say the world, I mean the Yu-Gi-Oh community. So, in that perspective, and of course, you can always think about anything that I'm talking about on this channel is always going to be Yu-Gi-Oh perspective. So, don't get that twisted. if I'm talking about one thing and I say something and you think I'm referencing something else outside of the Yu-Gi-Oh world. No, we're all in the world of Yu-Gi-Oh. We're all in the Duel Monsters universe. So that's what we're talking about. But anyway, I want to talk about losing because, as I mentioned before, that winning is always what we're talking about. So we need to give losing some play. And I think that the number one best thing about Yu-Gi-Oh, if you have a level head and got a good partner to duel with, like, consistently, and sometimes that partner can be yourself, so there's nothing wrong with that. But I think that learning how to lose, and uh, knowing when to call it a game are three things that you really need to monitor, not only for the game but it's real life. So like I said, losing, knowing when to call it, and taking a loss, because all three of those things don't happen at the same time. All those three things happen over time, but they all stem from the L. And obviously, a lot of you already know, oh, every time you lose, there's something to learn. And I mean, that's easy work right there. There's always something to look at and critique and say, okay, well, let me take this back and analyze it and da 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 da. But do you? Do you? Do you actually stop, get objective, look at the baseline rule of the situation, and understand, did I make the right choice? Could I made a better choice? Were there more options? Or was I just not going to win from the beginning? Was I probabilistically ousted? Was I outplayed? Was I overmatched? I don't know. But it all takes some analysis. And you got to have some sense of self-awareness to understand that when you lose, that there's value. So take the time to turn around and look back. So what are some things that I've lost when I have engaged with Yu-Gi-Oh? I mean, one of the things that I lost was focus. Like, when I first started Yu-Gi-Oh, it was an all-encompassing passion. It took over my mind and body. I'm just going to say it. And at that point, this is way back in high school, though. So, I'm dating myself a little bit. But back in high school, when I first engaged in this game and actually got some players and some friends around and things like that, like, I was completely involved and I couldn't think of or do anything else. So the first thing I lost was a whole lot of time, because I was doing things like skipping school and all kinds of silly stuff just to play Yu-Gi-Oh. Now, don't get it twisted. Now, I told my friends back in the day, when they decided to do the same thing, like, you really should take your homework home and do it. You really should take your classwork home and do it. Like, you might not be showing up. You are truant, but you got to do the classwork. Some of my friends didn't do the classwork and they got punished. They got to go to summer school, or they got sent to boarding school, or all kinds of crazy things happen. But hindsight being 2020, could I have played Yu-Gi-Oh and not did that? Yes. Did I? No. So essentially, I did my homework and my classwork always at home, never in class, turned in my assignments late. And when the time came, I looked on the board for graduation, my name wasn't there. So I had to snap my life in order, get into priority, and begin to like focus on school. And I didn't know at that time that I could love something like that. I didn't know that I could have a passion for something like that. I didn't know what it meant to have feelings for a game that overwhelmed my better judgment. And it's not a substance, it's not a person, it's just the thrill. But I realized what it was that was getting me so deeply enthralled into Yu-Gi-Oh, so deeply immersed into the world. Now, it's going to be very personal, but it might identify with you as well. So when I was growing up, as I mentioned in other videos, Yu-Gi-Oh is kind of an outcast game. It's a game that people play where they find people with this common interest and they find each other. They don't kind of necessarily congregate, so to speak. They will always find each other because essentially they can't exist within these other formalized groups at the time. Because at the time, there was no platform for anime, so there definitely wasn't platform for an anime trading card game. So a lot of people were excluded from groups and they came together. So that love, at first, I thought it was for my friends. And I did believe that. But then I found out it was not. And then I thought that love was for the cards. And I believed that for a very long time. But then it was not. And then I thought the love was for the game. And I sat with that for a really long time. So much so that I wrote books and all this other stuff. But I found out it was not that either. Right now, even all the way back in high school, when I first started out this journey, I realized that essentially my life leading up to Yu-Gi-Oh, I had never seen myself. I had never seen who I was. Every environment that I existed, church, school, home, etc., forced me to repress myself, repress who I was. And everything I was told was incorrect when I was not playing Yu-Gi-Oh. But when I was playing Yu-Gi-Oh, I was the man. When I was playing Yu-Gi-Oh, I was the guy with the knowledge. I was the trusted advisor. I was seen, valued, and that caused me to see and value and reflect upon myself and realize that there was something to value. And I spoke about identity in Yu-Gi-Oh as a duelist, but as a real person, that was something that I was able to store away for myself. Something that in a world that told me to diminish, to go lower, to be small, I was able to hide that part away that nobody knew about, that nobody cared to even see or ask. I was able to put that into a game. And it wasn't my identity. as a duelist because that identity had not been formed yet. But it was my identity. It was who I was. And I think that is what allowed me to build those friendships that lasted so long. Even to this day, my best friend comes from that group. And I believe that through Yu-Gi-Oh, I got a medium to learn who I was. And because I was able to learn who I was, I grew an appreciation for myself. So I was frustrated very much with YouTube because I felt like I lost. I felt like, damn, I didn't take advantage of YouTube when I could have taken advantage of it. And that's very true. Like YouTube in its prime, and I'm older, and it's just a lot of things mixing together. Like if I had a focused in that direction, I could have done that. But see, that's the thing though. I had value of myself. So I had to make priorities. And it wasn't like a personal choice, like this is a bad one, this is a good choice. It was more like I only got 100% and I've got to give my energy in these areas. There's no 110, there's only 100. And in order to maintain a high profile tech job, essentially I was given 99% to that. Maybe 98%, you could say. Because I was running around, flying around, driving around, boating around, training around, doing everything I could to keep, maintain, and build my career. And when that blew up due to the, I don't know what you call it, maybe we call it knowledge worker white collar recession. Maybe we call it that. I don't know what the news is calling it these days. But when that was blown up, and I had a huge ego death there because I had to give up something that I didn't want to. And if you really think about it like this, if Konami stopped printing Yu-Gi-Oh tomorrow and disconnected Master Duel, Yu-Gi-Oh would still be played. Flat out. It would still be played. So Konami doesn't even have that control there. So no one can really take away that from me, you know, but my job and career can definitely be taken away outside of merit or anything else. And when that happened, it forced me to have to take a look at myself and take a look at who I am to see if I'm still there. And I realized none of me was ever at the corporate job. It was all just extended efforts. It was almost like the person that worked in those places is like a ghost now. And when I went back looking for myself, I thought, I had to do a full assessment. Did I lose myself on YouTube? Did I lose myself in this career? Why can't I find myself? Like, why can't I do that? And I didn't want to get on YouTube and get in front of the cherished, loved Yu-Gi-Oh community that means so much to me and show you like, damn, the world is getting to me. But then again, the world gets to us all. So what am I hiding? So I realized that there was two things. Number one, I was kind of lamenting the choice of not taking YouTube seriously. And what's weird about it is, how does one not take Yu-Gi-Oh seriously and do all the things I've done? Been all the places, or YouTube seriously, and been the places I've been and do the things I've done. Like before COVID, I had a whole thing set up to do, like literally like COVID happened and it just blew everything up. But while I was in New York City, I had this whole thing set up where I was going to go down to the YouTube New York office and do all this stuff. But the YouTube New York office ended up closing due to COVID. And I was down there during that time. And, you know, it's just certain things regarding YouTube just didn't line up. And that's neither here nor there. But me being a duelist was always what I was holding on to. And when I returned to the game and the Gladiator Beast had gotten what I want to call it, they've got power crept, like, you know, they've got new cards, and um that's my whole thing. That's my archetype. I mean, I was more overjoyed than anybody, but the thing is, though, I wanted to enjoy it, but I part of my brain was saying, like, okay, you want to enjoy it, right? So you got to enjoy it correctly. And what's the point of enjoying it if you can't go to a tournament? So you got to go to the tournament. Now, when you get to the tournament, you got to make sure you win that tournament, and you got to make sure you can record it so you can put it up on YouTube, make it up content. And that's what I'm talking about right there. YouTube weaving its way into the passion. And that's not the look, man. They're like, you know, like I said, comparison is the thief of joy. Like, if you're putting YouTube and your Yu-Gi-Oh together, that's fine. But if you're going to play some Yu-Gi-Oh because you just enjoy it, maybe you should just duel. And maybe you shouldn't stream. Maybe you shouldn't upload that day. Maybe you should just enjoy the game, have fun. Maybe you shouldn't worry about if your deck is optimized. Maybe you shouldn't worry about all that stuff. Maybe you should just play. And sure, you might be like, well, I can't play because of Ash Maxi and all that stuff. But that's just a part of the game. And you love it, which is why you're online watching content like this, leaving comments such as that. Because you know that you're going to be playing tomorrow. And I'm sure a lot of people do this and don't make content, right? But they say they're going to be quitting anyway because they can't win, because they keep losing. Well, don't you know I made a book that'll teach you the fundamentals of the game? Don't you know I made an AI you can ask any question about the game? Don't you know that your loss can be analyzed in such a way you can see something different, maybe get a little better? And when you win, it's just a reinforcement of dopamine in your brain. You're going to get that win streak. You're going to be feeling great. So this whole video segment was about losing. And I feel like losing is the best part of Yu-Gi-Oh! If you're not losing, you're never going to win. You're never going to win. And even if you do get a couple lucky wins, you're not going to know how you did it. You know, you've got to lose sometimes. And what's really important about that is not necessarily a loss because like someone else declared it. It's only a loss because you've decided to analyze it and then bring it internal and understand what it is. You know, you don't have to play with it and mix it up and, oh, I'm gonna call it a learning opportunity. No, it's just a loss. It's just a loss. And sometimes you got to look at things for what they are. And that's how I look at this game. I look at this game as something that can help you build a sharper mind that will help you navigate real world boards, real world scenarios. You know, when you're trying, like right now, you know, trying to get a job. It's hard to navigate this space, but you can get a job. What job can you get varies based on your geological location. But at the end of the day, the numbers came out and it's less than one job per person looking for jobs. So what that means is if you're going to go out and find one, you're going to have to really go out and find one. You're going to put all your energy and attention into making sure every outreach or whatever is going to be direct, where you got a better chance of getting something back. So that means you might have to swing low. That means you might have to change your resume. That means you might have to make a new resume with different skills. And they may mean you need to just erase everything off your resume, start over fresh. You're going to have to try something different, because doing the same thing every day, every time isn't going to help you. You need to take a deeper analysis of each loss. And there's too many tools, videos, AI, second opinions for you to not look into whatever it is that made you lose. So that's just it. Those are my thoughts on losing. I feel like anytime you lose, unless you just know why you lost and you feel like there's no need to analyze, you can move on. But sometimes when you take a loss and you don't understand, it's important to do a full spectrum analysis. So, as always, I'll see you in the next one.